All right, back here on HQ Spotlight, we love to try and predict things in July, like who's going to win it all. And we are using
Oklahoma.
The blue chip ratio. I don't know about that. Yeah. I'm going to go Florida. Shocker. All right, so Bud Elliott, neither of them are on this list, by the way, but Bud Elliott, the creator of the blue chip ratio, and that's basically how many 4 or 5 star recruits make up your roster over the span of the past 4 years. So we see it here with the last, 5 or so national champions. They are all over 50. So Ohio State, 90% of their roster was made up by blue chips over the past 4 seasons. Michigan, kind of an outlier here. They were doing it with just over 50% at 54, but all of the champs have been above that 50% threshold since 2013. So in this day and age in college football, it feels like to win a national championship, a team needs to sign more 4 and 5 stars, aka those blue chips, over a 2 or a 3 star player. So if we're looking ahead to the 2025 blue chip ratio, there's Oklahoma, number 9.
No Florida to be found.
No, we're just outside of the top 10, I believe. I don't know, I gotta check that. 1-2, it is a tie. Ohio State, Alabama, they're tied right at the top at 89%. So for more on this, let's welcome in our cover 4 duo, Chip Patterson and Bud Elliott. So, gentlemen, Bama, Ohio State tied at the top there at 89%. And Bud, I'll come to you first here. How do you differentiate between these two teams according to the blue chip ratio? Because you got to kind of, give an edge or lean towards one or the other. So how do you do that when they're tied right at the top there?
Well, Jacqueline, you're right. They're both supremely talented teams with a lot of questions entering this year because they both lost quarterbacks off of last year's team. Bama lost Jalen Milroe, and Ohio State lost Howard. So when you're so loaded at so many positions, and I think Ohio State has more premier players that we know about, obviously Caleb Downs and JJ, who's probably the best player in the sport, regardless of position there at receiver, it's probably going to come down to quarterback. Who's going to have the better first-time starting quarterback? Neither of these teams went out and hit the transfer portal for a quarterback. They're going to lean on those in-house options, and whoever is the better signal caller is probably going to have the better season.
Advantage Ohio State, no question in my mind. The 4-year cycle that we have right here includes classes that were recruited by Nick Saban, who is not there on the sidelines. Now, I'm not going to go full Thomas Castellanos and throw out some bait for them to come and, sack me into oblivion, but I do think that the continuity advantage that Ryan Day has for Ohio State across this 4-year window that we're looking at, he mentioned Caleb Downs, one of the best players for Ohio State. He signed with Alabama and factors into Alabama's blue chip advantage. So the fact that we've had a coaching transition in Tuscaloosa, that we see the Nick Saban effect and that Alabama's blue chip ratio is still strong. And I do think that Alabama has one of the 3 most talented rosters in the SEC for 2025. But in terms of looking at these two programs at the very top of the BCR, I am edge Buckeyes, the reigning champions.
If we jumped in a time machine and fast forward, 5-6 months from now, Bama's clearly in that list with Ohio State, Georgia, maybe a few others, Texas, obviously, who you're like, yeah, okay, they won the national title. That makes sense to me. A couple things hit. They clearly had enough starting talent to get that done.
Man, Chip was standing on business. He said Ohio State and didn't even blink there. Okay,
no doubt.
If we go all the way back, we kind of look back towards 2011 and rewind a little bit. There's 6 teams who have won the national title while being under that 70% threshold. So Michigan, they did it at 54%, 2 seasons ago. But Chip, I'll come to you first here. Is there a team, when you're looking at the teams under 70%, who could do just that and go win a title? Who is catching your eye? Who comes to mind?
Jacqueline, it's the head coach in the program that have done it twice already. It's Dabo Swinney. It's the Clemson Tigers. And it's funny because I actually think that this roster does remind me a little bit of that Michigan team that won the national championship. Because what you'll see with that Michigan team was, they didn't have a crazy blue chip ratio, but what they did have was a lot of NFL draft picks. And this Clemson team, a lot of NFL draft scouts, as soon as, April comes and goes, they look and they're like, wait a second, down there in the upstate, Dabo's got himself a squad. He's got himself 3, maybe even 4 first-round picks, and certainly many more that will be going in the first 2 or 3 rounds of the NFL draft. So when you add in the impact of Cade Klubnik, who, like a JJ McCarthy, has had some time to be able to build up experience and develop to where he himself might end up being a first-round NFL draft pick, I just think that Clemson has all of the same traits of Michigan from a couple years ago, and then the Clemson teams that won it in 16 and 18 with NFL draft capable defensive linemen and a quarterback who might be a first-round rounder as well. Now, I like a lot of what Clemson's got going into this season. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm bringing my own guts. I think that they could, again, win the national championship without having that tippy-top blue chip ratio.
Chip, that's a good pick. I'm going to go same theme, different team. I'm going to go with Penn State, who actually bring back a lot of NFL guys who said, you know what? I'm going to take that Penn State check for NIL. I'm going to go back and maybe raise my draft stock from a third to a second rounder, from a second to a first rounder. Probably the best backfield in the country. Quarterback Drew Aller has all the talent in the world. Probably Penn State's best offensive line since that 2006 Orange Bowl team. So going back about 2 decades here, I know they feel really good about their offensive line now in Happy Valley. Pretty safe bet that Penn State's going to have a very athletic and good defense. So if Drew Aller makes that leap, if they get a receiver to emerge and actually throw a pass to him in a playoff game against somebody with a pulse, Penn State could do it.
Yeah, we saw there the blue chip percentage for Penn State right around 68%. So what team, Bud, looks at this blue chip ratio and is like, we're going to throw that out the window? What team do you think could bust the whole theory?
Now, this has actually come really close a couple times. The first time that Clemson had Deshaun, that when Nick Saban onside kicked, they would have busted it. The 1 year that Oregon had Mariota, they beat Florida State in the semis before Ohio State just stomped on them there in Dallas. It's come close to getting busted a couple times. But this year, it's hard to pick because the list is so expansive. I'm going to go with South Carolina and Lenoris Sellers, the quarterback. Now, typically, if somebody comes close to busting this, it's usually because they have a good enough roster, veteran enough, emerging talent. Maybe they don't have great depth. Maybe they stay super healthy so you don't have to lean into that depth quite as much. And you have a quarterback who's like a no-doubt first rounder, widely recognized as one of the best players in the country. For me, I think South Carolina is probably the closest to fitting that bill if I had to pick somebody.
Yeah, I've kind of got a cousin to that, right? Because South Carolina and Ole Miss, 2 teams that are close to 50% and ahead of everybody else, but not quite over the threshold. Mine's got a little bit more of a wild card because I'm going with the unknown of Austin Simmons. The former MLB draft pick who we didn't even know if he was going to be able to make it to college football, has such an athletic profile and so much talent that a lot of people are starting to get excited about how he will look in Lane Kiffin's system. Ole Miss's schedule is also a little bit friendly, much like it was last year, so you've got a good chance to be able to make it to double-digit wins. If they can be better along the offensive line, if they can get a few more of those transfer portal additions to hit at wide receiver, Austin Simmons, the unknown, could end up becoming one of the biggest stars in college football. But in general, I am in agreement with Bud. We're not going to reach for somebody with a blue chip ratio of 20% and think they can win the national championship, especially when the playoff requires you to beat multiple other teams that might be in the blue chip ratio. So give me the quarterback in Austin Simmons and give me the roster around him that's very, very close to the threshold.
Yeah, Ole Miss never making the CFP. They're plus 210 to make it 41-1 odds there to win it all. Chip, Bud, we certainly appreciate it going through the blue chip ratio, and the conversation continues in terms of SEC Media Days. Over on the Cover 3 podcast with the guys, they are breaking down the biggest news coming out of Atlanta. You can download, follow, listen wherever you listen to your favorite pods, or you can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.